Okay, so I want to dive into the article that you wrote on The Athletic about St. Louis, and it was very in depth. I have a few questions for you. So let's start with big picture to just double down on what you said. When you say sell, is Goldschmidt involved because there's only a year left? Of course, we know the guys coming up that are going to be free agents after the season. If you're selling, that's a no-brainer. Right. Jordan Montgomery, Jordan Hicks, Jack Flaherty. But how far would you go if you're the Cardinals and you're like 10 games back in the next couple weeks?
Well, what I wrote, Scott, is that they have generally taken a conservative course. They don't spend a whole lot of money. They don't do dramatic things at the deadline. They've made some big moves over the years. Arenado certainly was one. Goldschmidt was another. But the point of what I wrote is saying that their current strategy doesn't seem to be working. They've taken this conservative course, and look where they are, in last place in the National League Central. So basically the point was they should splurge in free agency, which is something they haven't done traditionally. Their biggest free agent contracts, Matt Holliday, it's going back over a decade, $120 million, or tear it down and surround your young position players with more and get more pitching and do some things along those lines. Now, I made it clear in the story that I don't expect the Cardinals to pursue either course, but Goldschmidt is a really interesting guy. Here is a player who is one of the best at his position, one of the best in the game. As you said, Scott, he's a free agent after next season. So, okay, he's got value for 2 pennant races. And also, you might be a Cardinals fan thinking, well, I want Paul Goldschmidt to stay. Okay, but he's going to be 37 at the start of that next contract. And not even Paul Goldschmidt's going to be really good forever. So, in my view, it's something they should look at. Now, if you trade Goldschmidt, you might as well trade Arenado too, because the thing becomes a situation where it's a little bit of a rebuild. And Arenado didn't want to be part of a Colorado team that wouldn't build around him. I don't know that he would want to be part of a Cardinal team that would build around him. So this is all theoretical and all just talking. And the one problem with everything I just described is this team draws $3 million a year when things are normal, not COVID. You draw $3 million a year to give up on a season is awfully difficult. You're basically telling all those fans who bought tickets for the rest of the year, sorry, we're not really trying the rest of the year. We're rebuilding. Maybe a certain segment of the fan base would welcome that. At the same time, it's just a tough sell.
Is getting rid of Goldschmidt selling? I mean, I know he's the reigning MVP, but what if you couple it with a team that has a starting pitcher to add to their mediocre starting pitching staff? And then all of a sudden, maybe they're, yes, they're taking away Goldschmidt, but they're adding to a huge weakness, which might really lift the whole team up.
Eric, that's a great question. And I think we've discussed this before, but I'll bring it up again. The notion of pure buyer or pure seller is something that guys like me and everyone in the media and fans too overstate. Teams generally are doing both at once, right? They're always trying to get better. So sure, it's possible you trade Paul Goldschmidt for a starter with maybe 2 years of control, whatever it might be, and you get some prospects too. And you go about it that way. You're kind of retooling on the fly, just putting your assets in a different kind of order. That would be perhaps the way they should go, given what I just said, the attendance that they annually have. I just don't know that that pitcher is going to be available. But for Paul Goldschmidt, I don't know, Eric. You're right. He might be.
Ken, you and I both know I played for the Cardinals. You covered the Cardinals forever. They don't do this. They don't blow it up and start over. They don't. So I find it hilarious to me that we're even talking about this because they're the middle of the pack team that just expects fans to show up, kind of like the Cubs for years. We'll be good. We might make the playoffs. We'll win. Now they used to try to win more, but they're like, we're banking, bank, baby. Ballpark Village, 3 million fans in Busch. They don't make the moves. They don't make the bold moves. Yes, they traded for Goldschmidt. Yes, they traded for Arenado. I get all of that, but they never go out and sign a guy, and they also never blow it up to a point where they would look at their fans and say, oh, we're going to start over. Because St. Louis fans would be like, why? We support you. You make money. So to me, I'm glad we're talking about it, but this ain't happening.
No, AJ, you make a great point. And I said in the article, I don't expect either of these strategies to be the one the Cardinals take this deadline or even beyond. At the same time, if there comes a point when people are no longer coming, and I don't know that point will ever be reached in St. Louis, or there comes a point where the frustration just becomes that much greater, then you have a different equation, right? Because you're not making all that money. And it's difficult with the Cardinals, too. I mentioned this in the article. John Mozeliak is getting a lot of heat right now, understandably. At the same time, he's kind of like Brian Cashman with the Yankees. Brian Cashman gets a lot of heat. Brian Cashman has had 25 straight winning seasons. They've been to the playoffs, I believe, every year but 3 during his tenure. Mozeliak has a similar record of success. He's been around running that team since 2007. They've been to a couple of World Series, won one. They're generally in the playoff picture. They had a little bit of a dry spell 2016 to 18, but they've been good. They haven't gotten too far lately, but it's hard to argue with what they've done overall, bigger picture, years and years. That said, this has got to be frustrating for them, and it's new for them, and they don't know necessarily what to do because they haven't been in this position before. The next few weeks will probably give them some direction.
Ken, first of all, stop standing up for your fellow bow tie wearer, Mozeliak. Okay, let's talk about him in real terms now, since yes, he is taking a lot of heat because he built the team. And
correct.
And he didn't get the starting pitching they needed. He didn't make some. If you look at their team, we've gone into this a million times. They have all the same players. Their outfielders are like the same guys. Take out Newpart, throw Carlson in, the same guy, right? Other than O'Neill, who's different. They apparently just want to get rid of him at this point. And then you have Adam Wainwright. They brought him back, and we love Waino. I love Waino. He deleted his Twitter because he was getting wrecked on there. So you know things are bad in St. Louis if they're going after a franchise icon like Adam Wainwright.
I agree, but they're still showing up. And that is the challenge of trying to rebuild when you have that situation. And AJ, you mentioned it. They never do this. They never have had to do it. And to me, though, they're a great team at developing. They get these players. Now, granted, you're right. There are a number of similar types in their outfield. They don't have any great young pitching right now in the big leagues. Maybe Liberatore becomes that guy. Maybe some of the kids in the minor leagues help become those guys too. But at the same time, this is a team that generally is competitive and generally just churns out player after player. If you retooled, kind of like the Yankees did the year they traded Chapman, you bring in some other guys and you go forward, maybe that's the way to go about it. And again, I'm not suggesting, one more time I'll say this, that they're going to do either one of these things. But I believe the last line of the story was, it's time for some better solutions. It is time for some better solutions. What they're doing, at least this year, and you might want to dismiss this year as an aberration if you're John Mozeliak. Maybe that's fair. But this year, it's not working.
Before we move on, Ken, do you have any advice for Adam Wainwright as somebody who deals with tons of Twitter trolls on a daily basis? I mean, even we talked about the topic yesterday. I think one of the comments was, I'm not going to listen to guys that don't have their hat on correctly. And it sounded serious. And I'm just like, you are the problem.
You know what, Scott? I don't have any advice for Adam, but I will say this. If I didn't have to be on Twitter for my job, I probably would not be on Twitter. I don't see any real constructive reason to be on Twitter. Adam has used it to promote some of his charitable ventures. He has done it for a little bit along those lines, but at the same time, if I'm a player, I want no part of this because it's not a rational world. You're not hearing from people who can offer constructive criticism. You know as a player when you're failing and when you're succeeding. You don't need some yo-yo with an egg, next to his name telling you that. So that's my advice. I would stay off it.